I was arrested on Parliament Square for holding the sign with the words, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action." Over 500 of us were arrested. And I feel, because I am a former military officer, that what we are doing as a country and what the government is doing with our armed forces is a disgrace. This year is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, and at that time it was the British Armed Forces that liberated this terrible concentration camp, and the scenes that were then seen and the photographs that were sent back to Britain shocked the country. And this time we are using our armed forces. The government is employing our armed forces not to prevent a genocide, but to facilitate one. And I think that's a disgrace and a humiliation for our country.
How does it make you feel that, we are sharing intelligence with Israel, still selling them weapons? Do you feel like that goes against everything you were taught in the military?
Well, in the military, certainly in my day, and I very much hope it continues now, once a year you are supposed to be trained. Of course, you're trained in military things like firing your weapon and physical fitness, and you're tested for that. But you're also supposed to be trained and instructed in international humanitarian law, in compliance with laws, that not all orders that you're given are legitimate. The Geneva Convention and indeed the Genocide Convention. And I don't think that we're complying with that at the moment. I mentioned Bergen-Belsen there, my father was born into a Jewish family. I don't consider myself Jewish myself, but my father was born into a Jewish family. They converted to Christianity, and they lived in Austria, in Vienna, where he was born. And in 1938, they had to flee. They had to flee the Holocaust and leave everything behind for their lives. And I am in a group called Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against the Gaza Genocide. And for us, this is really poignant. Many people have distinct family memories, things that they were told, that make them very, very sensitive to these scenes of genocide that we're now seeing. Because what we are doing is not just intelligence sharing and selling weapons. These are the ones that have made the headlines. But we are facilitating by using our base at Akrotiri. We are training, we have been training Israeli personnel over here. We allow senior Israeli military personnel to visit. We buy their equipment. We buy their training systems. I think this is appalling in terms of military collaboration with a country which is widely acknowledged as committing genocide.
When you held up that placard, you knew what you were doing, and you knew that there was a very high probability that you would be arrested, and not just arrested for anything, but arrested under the Terrorism Act. That must have been a huge decision to take. What led you to make that decision? I
felt that I had been doing what many have been doing, demonstrating, speaking out, writing into our MPs and others, and all that is very worthwhile and very necessary. But it clearly wasn't enough. Something more had to be done. And I felt I ought to be prepared to take risks. Many people are taking risks. Some people have said how brave we were to get arrested. But getting arrested in a relatively mild way in London is not really brave. People are being much braver. People are risking their lives to try and prevent the genocide. People are risking their lives, obviously, in Gaza, but on the flotilla that is sailing out there, they know that their lives are at risk. People are risking violent assault by police forces around the world. And I felt this was a risk and action that I needed to take, just to do more. And we must do everything we can. Our government should be doing everything they can to prevent this genocide from continuing.
Do you think we'll have more arrests coming up in a similar vein?
I don't know. I'm not part of the organizers of these protests, but I understand that there are more protests planned. I read that. Therefore, it is highly likely that more people will be arrested.
Keir Starmer spoke about anti-Semitism a lot, but do you think that there is space for anti-Zionist Jews like you and Jews who oppose the genocide in Gaza? Do you think there's space for people like you in the Labour Party?
No, and I think Keir Starmer's conversation about anti-Semitism, I'm afraid, was false from the very beginning. He knew that there wasn't significant anti-Semitism under Jeremy Corbyn. He knew that Jeremy wasn't an anti-Semite. And then within a very short time of becoming leader, he whipped up more criticism of Jews like us. So there's 67 Jews on my list of people who've been investigated for anti-Semitism in the party. So is there a place for anti-Zionist Jews? No, but nor is there a place for Jews who try to fight the false allegations of anti-Semitism and speak up for Jeremy. So they're often the same people, but they're not always identical.
Does that make the Labour Party anti-Semitic under Keir Starmer?
I was thinking about that question as I came here, actually, because the strict definition of anti-Semitism, and the one I keep to, is hatred or hostility towards Jews, so it's Jews in the plural. So if in an academic legal sense a party's only anti-Semitic if it doesn't like all Jews as opposed to some Jews. However, we've experienced this as hatred.
We're 2 years into a genocide, majority of which has been under a Labour government in the UK, and people like yourself have left the Labour Party partly because of it. Do you think that this issue could lose Labour the next election?
The fact is it does lie with Trump. And that state visit, that 2-day state visit, was utterly shaming. I mean, I think that was another trigger point for me, to watch the sycophancy shown for possibly a trade deal to the man who actually has it in the power and has made it worse, not better. So who knows what will happen to Trump or Keir Starmer in the next election, but they are war criminals, in effect. They have sanctioned war crime.
What would you like to happen now?
I care about policies. I know, and I'm fond of Jeremy Corbyn. I know he's a friend, but for me at the moment, it's all about policy. Perhaps it always has been. When I first joined the Labour Party, I was 15. And I knew then that the Labour Party stood for the vulnerable, the people people being murdered, but people vulnerable in every situation, disabled, suffering racism, refugees, as my own mother was a refugee. I've lost that sense now. What I want is a party that I think maybe Zach Bolansky would give us, and also Jeremy Corbyn under your party, or whoever becomes the leader, that stands against austerity, stands up for human rights internationally, stands up for refugees. One of the features of the last few years is that no Labour government have ever consulted non-Zionist Jews. They always consult the people who are considered to represent us, which actually the Board of Deputies does not. They only represent members of synagogues and only certain synagogues.
What more would you like to see the government doing?
Well, I think the government should start recognising that it has been in error over the last almost 2 years, that it should start recognising that there really is a genocide going on, and recognising that it has an international legal obligation to take action, not just to give words and hand-wringing gestures and theatrical performances, but real action. It is very indicative that 2 countries now, Italy and Spain, have sent warships in support of the aid flotilla that is approaching Gaza. And Britain could do more. Britain could actually use its military resources in a non-violent way to bring aid as a first start and challenge the Israelis to stop them and see where that takes it. And that would take real guts. I come back to this business of the Second World War, the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. That's what British armed forces did in those days. They didn't fight the war because of the Holocaust, but they did contribute to ending it in a very positive manner. And that's something I would like to see the government having the guts to do, and the honour to do, and the morality to do now.